WNST Task. Interesting nights, I think, to be a Ravens fan. First off, a considerable amount of folks deciding to not use their tickets on a chilly night for a wide variety of reasons. We'll get to that, and we'll continue to dissect that. But certainly the hit on Joe Flacco is going to be something that's going to be talked about all weekend as we watch Red Zone on Sunday, and what sort of punishment is going to be meted out by Roger Goodell, who is the hanging executioner in the commissioner's office for these type of hits. Chris Pica joins us now. Many of you know Chris was the first person I met in media in 1984 when I walked into the Baltimore News-American. He's a Mount St. Joe grad, a Loyola Greyhound, but never a Don, and now lives in Atlanta, where he once worked for the Atlanta Falcons and also worked for the New Orleans Saints in the front office in PR and on websites and in all sorts of stuff. Chris, I mean, you worked in this league a decade, and I got to tell you, when that's the exact thing that can never, ever, ever happen, a hook-sliding $25 million quarterback taking a kill shot. I don't know that I've ever seen anything as egregious, to be really honest with you, on a quarterback, especially when the quarterback – we've seen late hits. We haven't seen a guy get up looking bloody like Joe Flacco did and looking like that he thought he was in Minnesota. So, I don't know how this is going to go, but I know inside the Ravens – brass and inside the front office, boy, there's a lot of angst after that football game on Thursday night. You don't want to be that pissed after winning 40-0.
No, you don't. And again, the talk obviously from this game is going to be that hit, whether Alonso could have pulled up, could have moved. And it'll be very interesting to see how the league, and especially John Runyon, who's in charge of looking at player discipline in the league office, so how he'll see it.
John Runyon, former offensive lineman, right?
That's right.
He would have been the guy like Ryan Jensen killing Kiko Alonso after that hit, right?
Probably. And listen, they're going to have a bunch of different looks at it. And the one look to me that I thought was interesting was the all-22 look that was shown from the high 50-yard line. And in that, you can see Flacco begin his slide, and Alonso's probably 3 yards off, maybe 2.5 yards off. More than enough time to make a move one way or the other. And listen, I was on the sidelines in a preseason game where Jake Delhomme for the Saints almost got his head taken off nearly the same way. And this was before they really started. This was before the slide rule really was enforced. And it's difficult because he is running. You've got a defender that's taught, hey, the guy's running, you got to hit him. And there's a couple of things here in my mind that stand out. One, I think Alonso had at least 2 strides to make a decision on whether he was going to come directly at the quarterback or try to go to either side or try to go over the top and not hit him at all. And then that happens in some cases too. And that's certainly one of the considerations. The second one is the fact that Alonso, at least at one angle, looked like he followed Flacco to the ground, that it was not an attempt to stay high, as what you would argue, well, hey, if he's going high at that point, going over top of the sliding Flacco, he wouldn't touch him. The one angle clearly shows that Alonso is heading towards Flacco, towards the ground, and that might be the tipping point. But I think looking at it, listen, it fired the Ravens defense up. It is, and I think in some respects it is a bit of a bang-bang play on a football field. And listen, the officials, unlike college, where targeting is called a lot, okay, and they look and they're not afraid to eject players. I think NFL officials don't want to eject players from games unless it's something so egregious that they have to do it. I think that was one of those things where they penalized, and probably the official said, we'll let the league office deal with it, whether he gets suspended or not. We're not going to make that decision on the field, unless he came in, let's say, helmet to helmet is probably going to be an ejection, okay? A high forearm to the head coming in like that is certainly going to be an ejection. Those two, I think, are pretty clear. He came in with the shoulder. He is leaning low, and so the officials gave a little bit of benefit of the doubt to keep him in the game, but it'll be up to the league office to decide whether to suspend. And this might be unpopular, and I'm probably going to be wrong, but I think he's going to be fined heavily. I don't think he's going to be suspended because he doesn't have a history of that. Unlike a Ndamukong Suh who put his arm or put his hand around Ryan Mallett later in the game and actually had kind of choked him for a couple of seconds. that I'm sure is going to be reviewed by the league office, and Sue has a history of a lot of fines.
Dude, it was a hideous display all the way around, right? I mean, from the Alonso hit to what Sue did, it was beyond chippy at various points. And Ryan Jensen doesn't mind that style of play, quite frankly, as he's in the middle of all of it, kind of like a horse wrangler. But, in the case of Flacco, seeing him bloodied, seeing him getting his ears stitched up, seeing him look like he just took a kill shot to the head because, quite frankly, he did. I can't imagine they're not going to suspend him, Chris.
It's going to depend on the history of the player. They're going to look at every angle. But I'm going to say that I think it's going to be close. But I don't know if they're going to do it. I just don't know if there's enough there. Yes, there was contact to the head, but it's not a helmet. The helmet hit, it wasn't a forearm to the head. There's a couple things that they're going to look at, and Runyon, as a former player, is going to look at that differently, let's say, than you and I would look at it. So they'll take a look at the tape and see what happens. I mean, it's certainly on the table that they're going to do it, but I'd be interested to see. I think it'll be a heavy fine. I just don't know if they're going to pull the trigger on a one-game suspension.
He is Chris Pica. You can follow his journey, and many do, out on Twitter at Blog and Tackle. He is, of course, a Baltimorean and our pal that we bring on from time to time, a longtime Saints and Atlanta Falcons front office worker. He's also the communications director for the Bahamas Bowl, as well as for the Pro Football Writers Association of America. Not much to write in this one at 40-0, but, typical sloppy 4-day out football, team on the road, all of that going on, but some signs of life from the Ravens. I mean, they ran the ball, and certainly anytime you throw up a donut in this league, whether it's against Matt Moore, I mean, there were certainly National Football League players on that side of the ball. It was an impressive defensive evening, and it was an impressive night to run the football. I don't know what the future will be with Ryan Mallett, but at least for the next 10 days before we go to Nashville next week, get a bye, and then go to Green Bay, the season's alive. They're 4-4, and you can make a little bit of a case that, well, the defense woke up and they're running the ball, so maybe they'll be okay the next couple of weeks.
Well, like I said, as I always am fond of saying, every week is a season in the NFL. And Alex Collins certainly had a huge game, 18 carries for 113 yards. Ravens offensive line, I mean, the positives from this game is that the Ravens offensive line opened up huge holes against the Dolphins. And when you get the type of rushing yards that the Ravens did in that game, when you look at 174 rushing yards, that's a huge number. The bigger numbers of defense held the Dolphins to 45. Really didn't let Miami do much of anything to get started. Yes, you get sort of a lucky bounce in the end zone for a touchdown, and an interception, which was actually I think a heck of a play by Mosley, because he was locked up by the defender, got a hand up in the air, got a tip, was managed to get a hold of it and take off down the sidelines. I thought that was a pretty athletic play, but interceptions sometimes are lucky, sometimes you track the ball. Mosley had to be in the right place at the right time, made a great play, went down, got a touchdown. So they've got a lot of positives. Justin Tucker had a great night, so he had a field goal blocked. I mean, this was a complete team effort, and luckily for the Ravens in that respect, although the game was still somewhat in doubt when Flacco left the game, Ryan Mallett looked good in getting that touchdown to extend the lead, and at that point, after halftime, there wasn't much reason for folks to stick around because the second half was going to be pretty bad. But if you're the Ravens in the NFL, you have to look around that stadium prior to game time and see a lot of empty seats. There were a lot of empty seats in the upper deck.
But I don't know what's to be done about that, Chris. I mean, that's going to get me feisty here today. Does Dick Cass have to call every season ticket holder and explain this? I mean, literally. I mean, it's kind of an outrageous thing. If you don't want to use your tickets, fine. If you're not going to renew them, I guess fine. But I don't know that the Ravens owe everyone a mea culpa, and that Dick Cass and Steve Bisciotti have to call every season ticket holder and say, pretty please come back. I mean, there were 50,000 people in the seats last night. I walked around after the game. I walked around during the game. People were happy the team was winning. The people that were there were yelling defense. They were moving the chains. They were into it. They were standing for the national anthem. They were owing during the national anthem, which could be every bit as offensive as taking a knee. I just, if you don't want to use your tickets, you can't find anybody. I find that very hard to believe that you'd buy tickets and you can't find anyone in the world because everyone hates the Ravens these days. I just thought, I don't think that that's accurate. I think that there are people trying to make their statement with their empty seats, even though they've spent $100, $200 for the tickets. And, okay, statement made. You're angry. Now what? Now what are we going to do? You want him to kick C.J. Mosley off the team and Terrell Suggs off the team for taking a knee? I don't understand what the end game is for people who have, quote-unquote, loved the Ravens all these years, and now you're just going to abandon them because you're a little pissed off at their political position. I don't – if you want to get pissed off at political positions, I probably wouldn't have any friends left. Most of us wouldn't have any friends left, right? Because, we're in an isolated state. But I don't know what the Ravens owe the fans here other than what they've given the fans here over 22 years, which is – pretty good football team, trying to, walk the right line with players. The Ray Rice thing still, and the Ray Lewis thing, and the Jamal. The fact that they've had guys in jail and have had problems is a problem. And, they've addressed that. The whole league has addressed that. And I just don't know what puts an ass in that seat once that ticket is sold and has been sold to the same group of people for 20 years when they just decide to take the piss. I don't know what to say about that. I'm not going to come over and rub their forehead and rub their temples and tickle their feet, but I'm not getting $200 a ticket out of them either. And if they don't want to come, I guess they're not going to come. But I don't know what's the end game here. You're pissed at your wife. You want her to say, I'm sorry. You have to buy her roses. I don't know what the Ravens are supposed to do about this, quite frankly.
Well, I mean, listen, every empty seat, there's a reason for every empty seat, and there's probably 100 different reasons for that.
And one of them would be the team is stunk. I mean, quite frankly, right? The team has been uninspired.
And quite frankly, that's probably the biggest reason is, it's a work night, it's a Thursday night, it's a school night. You've got kids that are going to go to school the next day. It's a late start. It's a Thursday. Even if you've gone to games for years, getting into town and going to the lots on a Sunday is incredibly easy compared to trying to do it on a Thursday where you've got traffic coming in and out of downtown. And
the notion of getting home at midnight and having to get up for work, I'll hear that all day.
Right.
Especially if you live more than half an hour away.
Thursday, and that's why I'm not a huge fan of the Thursday night games, because I think it does make it harder on the fans to come out to the game. Now, of course, this months in advance that this game is going to be on Thursday night. It's not going to get flexed. It's not going to get moved game time-wise. It's sitting there on Thursday night. But even if you're angry at the team, let's say, okay, and you're holding a ticket for $150 or $200 and you've paid good money for those seats, to me, you're putting those tickets out on the NFL ticket exchange or StubHub or wherever to try to get some of that money back and let somebody buy the tickets, unless the market outside the stadium has been incredibly soft. And again, I don't know if Sundays have been the same way necessarily, this year, but I think the team struggles, especially laying an egg like they did at Minnesota after, and how badly they've played in stretches after a 2-0 start. I mean, that's got something to do with it, too, and obviously the prevailing anger of the team has something to do with it.
Well, I remember back when we stunk, 10 years ago, the Kyle Bowler era when, Brett Favre came in here with the Packers, and there were only 30,000 people. But, I mean, it was 28 degrees that night. You know what I mean? It's 50. It was chilly, man. I mean, I sat up there. It was a night where you needed a layer more than you probably thought you needed when you left the house. And it was one of the first cold nights of the year, with or without sitting outside for a football game for 3 or 4 hours. So, but I have noticed in the years when we stink, people just won't come to the games when the weather gets bad. So it was a perfect storm. But the people that are dissenters, the people that are F the Ravens, I'm not going, and leaving their seat empty, I don't know what that. I don't know what that's about. I don't. Hey, I want to sell my PSLs. I want to get rid of my tickets. I'm done with them. Fine, be done with them. Go sell your tickets, give them away. But to sit home and bitch and try to make a point, I don't know what the point is. The point is they're all standing now, and you had something to do with it. I don't know. I mean, it's certainly not going to fix the problem. At the heart of all of this, I'm a solution guy, not a symptom guy.
Well, I think, too, you look at it, and let's say there are 50,000 of that crowd. Let's say it's 50 or 55,000 that are diehards that will show up at every game, and you count on those people to be there regardless of the weather, regardless of the team's play. They're going to be in the stadium. And generally, at least in the early years and the great years, most of the remaining people who went to the game, some of those people had tickets in their companies and going, hey, I can't go, but I'm going to give it to somebody who may get to go to one game a year, okay? And it's a tough ticket. It's one game a year, and they're excited about going, and that pretty much fills the remaining seats in the stadium or people that might get a shot at one set of tickets a season and are really, really excited to go. And now you have a situation like that where people either aren't picking up the tickets, don't want to go, don't want to spend the money. They want to be comfortable. They're sitting in front of their television at home, in front of their 45-inch TV, and they've got their food, and it's warm, and they're happy. And like I said, there's 100 different reasons why people don't use their tickets to games. So when I work for the Saints and Falcons, that's a frustration. That's one of the frustrations. The other frustration is that they sell it directly to the opposing team's fans because they don't get to see their team play much at home because their games are sold out. So like the Packers and Steelers and a few other teams, they've got a huge road contingent that'll buy those seats. And there certainly weren't a lot of Dolphins fans that were excited to come to Baltimore or Dolphins fans in Baltimore that wanted to come and buy those remaining tickets some of those remaining tickets to get into the stadium. And but this is an overall problem with the NFL. This is not just a Baltimore thing.
Yeah, we're not the only place with empty seats this weekend. That's for sure.
No, it's not. And I that's what I'm saying. I don't want to pick on Ravens fans specifically. This is a league-wide problem, and it's always been a league-wide problem. Usually, though, like I said, people are excited to get one ticket a year, two tickets a year. They show up and they're excited to be there.
It's one thing to not be able to sell the tickets. Another thing when the ticket's sold, nobody's sitting in it. That's the weird part for me. I don't know what you're trying to do by pulling tickets out of your desk the next day and saying, I've got kindling paper here that cost me $300. That part is very, very randomly bizarre to me. There's only 8 games. There's lots of people that would like to go to a game. I can't imagine you put tickets out. Maybe you don't have any friends, or maybe all your friends think like you do. I don't know. But it seems to me if you put your tickets out on the internet, someone would use the tickets.
Yeah, especially because the NFL tries to make it easy through the ticket exchange, and at least you get an opportunity to get some money back. It may not be a lot of money depending on the opponent, but you do get something back for it. And
I remember a day when you had extra Colts tickets, my dad's phone would ring on a Sunday morning, and if we were at church, we'd miss the call. Literally, a buddy at work would have a ticket for my dad or whatever. You don't have to call people anymore to give tickets away anymore. All you got to do is open your phone and put it out there, and someone will find your tickets, especially if they're free. I just don't think it's that hard to give a ticket away. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, look, the Orioles, I had people trying to give Orioles tickets away for a decade and couldn't give them away. Of course, there's 80 games, the weather's better too. But I find it very hard to believe that there weren't 10 or 15,000 other fans who would have wanted to go to the game last night if it was free. That's all.
And too, I think the Ravens have obviously tried to respond to that a little bit with what they've done at M&T Bank as far as the upgrades. You've got that video board upgrade in both of the end zones. They've made the areas around the stadium nicer. They try to continually improve the fan experience of coming to a game because they understand that you can sit at home in front of your TV with Sunday Ticket or on a Thursday night where you've got to wake up early the next day and you're kind of making that flip-flop decision. Am I going to go to the game? Am I not going to go to the game? And there are a lot of those types of folks too. And yes, you do have a section of folks who are, who are on the other opposite camp. They're just not going to go, and they're not going to sell their tickets. But to me, it's, you get them to somebody who can use them, or you get them out on the exchange. And this is a story that I think that's going to bear watching. And if the Ravens continue to, let's say the Ravens turn around and play well, and are becoming potentially a playoff team down the stretch, what's the stadium going to look like in late November, early December, especially when the division games come back around again? That, I think, is going to be sort of the true picture of where fandom, at least in 2017, is for the Ravens.
Different defense out there with Brandon Williams, right? I mean, it's the reason you pay him $12 million, and taking on the doubles. It didn't look different in Minnesota, against that team, but it certainly looked different against a tired Matt Moore-led Dolphins team. Jay Ajayi, I know you quipped that little kitty cat in the fourth quarter had more yards on the first sprint than Jay Ajayi had all day. That's not true because he did have 21 yards on the first run and 23 for the whole day. So, but that was stout, and I think that's what we've come to expect from the Ravens defense, and we haven't seen that in the last couple of weeks because Brandon Williams wasn't there or wasn't as good as he's been, certainly in the Minnesota game, but that changed on Thursday night.
Well, it did change on Thursday night, and they made a decision that they weren't going to let Ajayi beat them, and basically they were going to dare Matt Moore to beat him with his arm. And when Moore finished 25 for 44 for 176 and a pair of interceptions, and so obviously the Ravens' game plan was stop the run, make Moore beat you because we don't think he can. And so against a second-tier quarterback, that's what happens. It's a little different deal when you're facing a number one team or number one quarterback week in and week out. They've had some issues. But again, you've got something to build on off of Thursday night. Now they've got to figure out how they got 10 days to get Flacco healthy, to get him out of the concussion protocol, or they've got to get Mallet ready if he's not. And we don't know that. That's sort of the key piece here is how long is it going to take for Flacco to come through the protocol, and we'll get answers in the coming days.
It did not look like a good variety of concussion, did it?
No, he came up and he's blinking. He was a little bit unsteady. I mean, he was smart enough to kind of get his hand in the air to let the sideline know, hey, I need a little bit of help. And that's usually the automatic upstairs. Even if Flacco had tried to stay into the game, I'm sure that the medical spotter upstairs in the press box would have had Flacco yanked to have him evaluated in that situation. But Joe was smart enough to realize, hey, listen, I got hit, and I'm not feeling right, and I'm gonna get myself out of here. And even that's a change. I mean, a lot of quarterbacks probably would have taken that hit, gotten up, and sprinted back to the huddle, or tried to act like that they were okay and stay in the game as much as possible.
I think he was incapable of that. I mean, that was pretty obvious from the minute he got up. I don't think he was capable of playing football. Maybe in the old era they would have thrown. I mean, obviously with the blood and the whole deal, I mean, he would have left the game no matter what. But, I hear what you're saying. In the old era, we would have been questioning that. Now it's just, the minute you saw him take the hit, you knew he wasn't coming back and playing football on Thursday night.
Yeah, I mean, he's looking with his eyes wide open. He's blinking. I mean, it's obvious from the television angles that he definitely, he definitely took a shot. And like I said, was smart enough to realize, hey, I need to come out of the game and I need to get looked at here, obviously, because I don't think he realized his ear probably for a minute or two until one of the trainers said, hey, you're bleeding because you're just sort of in shock from the hit. That like I said, that's a big change, and it's nothing to mess with. Concussions are nothing to mess with. We know that, and they're going to take their time walking through the protocol. He obviously couldn't speak to the media because that's part of the protocol where you don't speak to the media until you're cleared. So, we may not hear from him for a few days, but obviously with the weekend off and another week in the next week, they've got time for him to get better, but every player responds differently to concussions. So you can't you can't sort of say, well, he's going to be back in 1 or 2 days. No one knows until he goes through this how long that's going to take.
He is Chris Pica. He is Blog and Tackle on Twitter. You can follow him. He's in Waco, Texas, watching football this weekend and always jetting around somewhere for ESPN or for other television production companies out of Atlanta, Georgia. Always good to visit with you, man. Great to see you in Minnesota the other day, too, for your little drive-by. We're going to have a good time out there at the Super Bowl now, aren't we?
I think it's going to be a tremendous Super Bowl. The Minnesota folks, the Super Bowl host committee in Minnesota has done a tremendous job. They branded it as the Bold North, and Minneapolis is a great city. And I think that it's going to be a fun week. Even if the weather is the way it is, they can handle it up there certainly. And I think that the NFL and that area will put on a great show.
Well, the one thing about Minneapolis, and I'll continue to point this out the week we're there, is the beer will be cold, right? I mean, you don't need to bring any ice or anything. The beer stays cold there.
The beer stays cold, and people know how to handle it. It is a beautiful stadium. That is really a jewel of the NFL. They've done it right there. It's a great sight line for the fans. I mean, I think it's one of the best NFL stadiums that I've seen here built in the last 10 years.
Well, they keep improving, right? One upon another, and taking the best part of Dallas and making it, the part of Atlanta. Haven't been to the new dome in Atlanta yet either. Is a massive improvement over the old joint, though, huh?
It is a massive improvement, and again, that comes back to fan experience. You've got a huge video board, above you, which is sort of a different look, a different roof look. But it's certainly better than what the Georgia Dome was, and that you give credit to the companies like Populous who who have really game changed how fans view the NFL. And, there's a lot of investment in those stadiums and in the fans coming out. And they try to make it as comfortable as possible. It's not just, Memorial Stadium where you get a seat, sit out in the cold freeze, and, you don't have, you've got barely a scoreboard to look at, much less a video board for replays. They really do now try to make that like a home experience for the fans to make their way out.
All that being said, he's Chris Pica, Blog and Tackle. I'm still pissed about the replays on the Flacco stuff inside the stadium. They spent $2 billion on boards, and I still haven't seen the replay on a board. I've seen it on my mobile device. You can find me out in the BuyAToyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear all weekend long. We're watching the World Series, watching NFL, tweeting, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, anywhere we go. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.